what I do with my daughter.
All right.
I just go back and look at every school.
It's 5:30, so we'll call to order the regular school board meeting of the Madison Central School District, this being Monday, September 11th, 2017. Mr. Brooks will record the members present or absent, and it looks like we have a full board. We'll establish a quorum. Before we do the Pledge of Allegiance, I'm going to take a little liberty. I would like to have us just take a moment of silence for remembrance of what occurred back on 9/11 in '01. So let's just take a moment for that. And let's affirm that with our Pledge of Allegiance to our flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. We have no adjustments to the agenda, so I look forward to a motion and a second for approval.
So moved.
So moved by Mrs. Sims. Is there a second?
Second.
Mrs. Schultz has the second. Further questions or discussion? Hearing none, all in favor of approval of the agenda signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Declare the motion has passed. Item number 6 is our consent agenda. Items 7 through 9, we have our minutes of our August 14th meeting. Mrs. Sims, Mrs. Cecil, and myself went through the bills. There were some big bills in there, but everything looked to be in order. The remainder of the financials are posted out there and available. Anybody have any questions on any of those? Then we're on to Mr. Jorgensen with his personnel actions.
As you can see, we have some requests to hire, actually ready for 7th grade volleyball. Special ed paras, Kayla Aragon and Shannon Gary. And again, they're replacing folks we had in those positions last year. Caitlin Glover as a classroom para, that would be for junior kindergarten. Madeline Johansson as a kindergarten teacher, the A plus 15 at 43.6. And then playground aides, Casey Cookman and Rachel Johnson. And then contract change for the 2017-18, Lorraine Glenn from MA 30 to MA 45, and that would be at 54.5.
So the recommendation obviously is to approve the personnel actions along with the other consent items. I entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda.
So moved.
Okay, Mrs. Sims gets the motion, Mr. Miller gets the second. Further questions or discussion on the consent items? Hearing none, all in favor of approval of the consent items signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And opposed, nay. Declare that motion has passed. Anyone here to address the board this evening? If not, we'll move on to number 11 with Dr. Wade Pogany.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and members of the board. I'm Wade Pogany from the Associated School Boards, and it is just a delight to be here tonight, to be with you. We started a program to recognize school boards throughout the state last year, and whether you know it or not, we were watching you for a whole year and watching what your activities were and what you were doing. And so this year we get to make the tour around the state and give plaques and awards to those schools that were a part of the ALL program. And on your individual stands, we have a handout that describes this recognition program. And what it does is simple. It looks at 3 categories of board activity. And we know from research and other things that boards are active in their communities, if they're learning, if they're doing some things that improve their boardsmanship, if they are leading in a way that is outstanding, they should be recognized for that. And so that's what we set out to do, was to recognize boards. And you can see in the description that there are different levels in different activities. And every time that a board member or the board itself participates in one of these activities, we record that and it goes into our database. So you might have gone to the joint convention, you might have had a board training here with one of our trainers, you might have attended some legislative function, you might have done a variety of things that accomplished some activities along the line of act, learn, and lead. And so we kept track of your points all year long, and we looked at it, and there are 3 levels. There are bronze, silver, and gold. And in order to achieve one of the awards, there were 47 school districts in our state that achieved at least a bronze, a silver, or a gold level. And so tonight, I'm here to give the Madison board the bronze level award for our very first time that we've had this activity. And we're hoping that school boards will become even more involved and continue to learn, to continue to get training, continue to be actively involved in all the things that are happening in our state. And so it's with great pleasure, Mr. Chairman, that I give you and the board the bronze level Associated School Board Recognition Award. Congratulations.
Thank you. Let's get the whole board and we'll do a picture.
If we could. That's your chance. Gotta get a picture.
Wait, you want in there?
What's that?
You want in there?
No. Just get the board here.
You standing on your tippy toes, Steve?
You want me to kneel?
You can't even hold the flag.
You can open that.
Yes, you should hold
Yes,
that.
you do, yes.
I need help though, it's pretty heavy.
Gotta move Lori so you can.
All right, how are we doing? Is Lori in there now?
Okay?
Lori's hiding in the back. You can get this, we'll get a couple of them here. Now smile this time.
Yeah.
There we go. I'm gonna go here, get Lori in there.
My hair okay with me?
Here, the lack thereof is fine, John. I got mine. Good, you guys are good?
All right. Well, thank you, sir.
Fantastic, that's great.
Which one do you want?
I do want to say too, I'll tell you, it's been a lot of fun to work with Tom. Tom is also on my board. I serve an 18-member board that represents schools from all over the state. And Tom Farrell is the first vice president this year on that board. And so we are just delighted to have Tom working with us. And next year he will advance to the presidency. And it's been great to have Tom on. He's a great leader, a terrific guy. Knows a lot about boardsmanship, knows a lot about schools in general. And so we've had a lot of chance to work together on some other projects. But Madison's got a lot of stuff going on. And it's really a wonderful place to be. So you're lucky to have good leadership. But thanks to all of you for all you do for Madison School District. So it's great. I get to go to Howard and see them tonight too, but I'll stay for a few minutes.
All right, thank you much.
Thank you.
As we were planning the agenda, I heard a little sub from the superintendent that maybe a board goal should be able to move from bronze to silver. And I think that we are pretty much off to a good start because Lori went to the new board membership thing. I went to the president's training. We had Rob, Lori, and myself at the convention, so.
And you're a board member, so we get points for
You
that.
get points for that, yes. Yes, so I think that we want to make that a goal. We have an opportunity to pick up some points coming up in October with our regional meetings, and there'll be a regional meeting in Brookings this year rather than in Madison on there. Wade knows what I'm talking about on that, but anyway, the meeting in Brookings is on Tuesday the 3rd, and if that one doesn't seem to fit, the next closest would be on Thursday the 5th in Sioux Falls. Or if somebody wants a road trip to see the Dakota Dome, there's one in Vermillion on the 4th. So those would be the regional meetings that would be in the area, and last year I think we had 5 or 6 of us at our regional meeting here, and it's a great opportunity for us to learn about the issues that will be talked about legislatively. It actually is where Wade kind of gets his marching orders to bring back to the delegate assembly in November for us to determine what the political platforms of the association are going to be. So you might want to look at those and let Mitch know if you want to attend one of them, and he'll get us registered. Meal is provided, meeting starts at 6, and he always has us out of there by 9. I was going to say 9, but 8:30 he tries to.
8:30 at the latest.
8:30 at the latest. So Again, thank you, Wade, for your leadership in the state association also. All right. Administrators report.
I asked Mr. Shaw to join us too, if you'll pull that up, Steve, so we can share some news on the ACT scores. We talked a little bit about it. I'll just let Adam talk first.
You go ahead.
The high school that
I'm along for the ride, you go
did a
ahead.
great job. These were embargoed, so we couldn't share them until last Thursday morning, I think, when we had the staff in. And Adam shared the news with them, and if you look at 2016, the results, and then the 2017, that second line's in bold. And if you look at the composite, that's what really jumps out, the 24-4. That's a good score. Went back in the last 5 years, and I found, I think it was 3 scores that were 24 above. I mean, it was 4 scores in the last 5 years that were at that height. So our 2017 graduating class did quite a job, and our staff did an awesome job, obviously, too. So, and if you pull the other one up that shows a 5-year trend.
This one or the next one?
Yeah, that one there. You'll see that each year, there may be a year where it was down a little bit in some areas, but for the most part, the trend has been in the areas of constant improvement. So I don't know if you want to touch on anything, Adam.
I just think, like I told the staff 3.5 years ago, I came to them and I drew a 2-tracked arrow on the board, and I just told them that we're going to take some risks and do some different things outside the box. We've really worked to track our kids career-wise, tech schools, workforce development. I think that's part of the direct result. We're getting our kids a test that need to test, and the kids that are going to the 2-year track are really working on dual credit and apprenticeship and things like that. So I think, this is a testament to our faculty and our parents, and we have great kids here. So
if you look from like 2013 on, we've been in the top quarter to third, and you'll see, for example, like in 2016, with the score we had, it was 26 out of 112. That's 112 schools that could report, because if you're a school that tests less than 10, your number doesn't show up. That's why in other years you see the number was 116 or 124, because you had some other schools, smaller schools, that had at least 10 kids that took the test. If less than 10 take it, it doesn't get published on that list. So then, for example, in 2016, out of 112, our score ranked 26 out of 112, so in the top 77%. And you can sort of break down each year how it is. 24-4 is awesome. It's a high goal to set for next year. But we also know every year different kids come through. We want to look more at averages over a 3 to 5 year span, how we're doing. But awesome news for the high school staff and the kids, and again the community for supporting the school the way they do. But we just wanted to share that with you tonight on the ACT results.
we had about 2/3 of our senior class
Yeah.
take the ACT, so that's pretty good.
Which is a very high percentage,
Good number.
statewide even, so. The other thing I want to credit Adam with is he took time to celebrate with the staff on Thursday morning, and there was food aplenty, and even the bus drivers got food as they were getting their EpiPen training afterwards, so that had to make that training go a little better anyway, Paula, right?
They're all trained.
Now if you pull up the enrollment too, Steve, if you would, and you've seen some of this, but again, our enrollment trend over the last 15 years, we're at 1226, we're up 70, so we had 3 more kids a week go show up, which is good. The 1228, we got to remember, that also included, back in 2003, that included the colony school. So you take colony schools out of there, the enrollment's actually higher than it was. And like I said, the only reason I didn't go back farther is because 15 years I could pull up on a computer easy versus trying to dig for more information. So, but the big thing, if you look from 2012, that was the lowest enrollment we had at 1087 to now at 1226. That's a 139 kid increase in that time frame. So 26, 26, 2, and 70. You'll see the trend before, other than the 1 and the 4 was pretty much a downward trend for 10 years there. And that was pretty typical across the state. And that was pretty much, most of the schools in the state were seeing that downward trend at that time frame. So,
What year did we lose the colonies?
You say 2013, is that right?
No, it was after that.
It was 2014, following the 2014 school year.
Okay.
So the 2015, 2016 were minus the colony enrollments.
So there again, so when I got the 15, I should just slide it over, because then that 26 could have been a higher number, even though the county had split two different ways, it still would have been at least 15 students higher. But just some information to look at as we move forward. If you scroll down just a little bit, there, Steve. So in the last 5 years, we're up 100 kids. The last 10, 103, and then from way back, then we're up 85. So it's a good trend. It's a lot better than a trend of we have 70 kids who went backwards. Still create some unique issues that we'll deal with as we move forward down the road, but they're good problems to deal with. I know in the high school and the elementary, both are up about 33 kids in each of those areas. Just wanted to share that. That's all I have, I guess, for the administrative report.
Anything else from you, Adam?
No.
Paul, anything you want to share? Mr. Brooks? You guys are all quiet tonight. All right. Dr. Cook has given us his middle school report with his pictures. No videos this month, though, if you noticed. So straight pictures on that. That moves us on to item number 13, which is consider approval of open enrollment applications 18-10 through 18-13. Mr. Jorgensen.
4 open enrollments. 2 are from the same family. There's a first grader and a kindergartner, which these have all already been in school here, and an 11th grader and a 12th grader. So 2 from Oldham area, 1 from Chester and 1 from Howard. So we would recommend that they approve all those.
So we have a recommendation from the administration to approve open enrollment applications 18-10 through 18-13. Anyone wish to make that motion?
Someone.
Mrs. Sims makes the motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Hanemichael. Further questions or discussion? Hearing none, all in favor of approval of open enrollment applications 18-10 through 18-13 signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Declare that that has passed. Mr. Brooks, item number 14, imprest account up to $15,000.
So what this is, we currently have an interest account of $6,000, and that allows us to pay obligations prior to the next board meeting. With our last audit we had, there's 4 to 6 months a year in which we spend over the $6,000. There's 4 months a year where we spend about $12,000 to $14,000. It's kind of on November, December, January, February. We have our basketball events, our wrestling events, and our gymnastics events for the referees, and things associated with that. And so then, with visiting with the auditor, he just kind of recommended we just increase that to that amount. So we're bringing that forward for consideration. And if you have any questions on that.
Move to approve.
Okay, there's a motion by Mr. Nelson to approve the increase in the imprest account to the $15,000. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Miller. Further questions or discussion? Hearing none, all in favor of increasing the imprest account to $15,000 signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Declare the motion is passed. On to item number 15, second reading of proposed policy BDA board meetings. What I think we'll plan to do is we'll look at each of these. If we're in agreement, we'll kind of take it like a consent agenda and approve them. If we're in support, if there's one we want to discuss further, we'll pull it out and do that one as a separate action or motion. This one just basically made the change in our meeting time to bring it up to where we're at as being a time that we designate on the agenda. So any questions, discussions there? Steve, I'll bring up BHA then.
You betcha.
And that is new board member orientation. And again, that primarily the change is bringing up to the proper location of those where it appears on our website. Instead of using internet, we're saying the district webpage, being a little bit more specific as a part of that. Any questions there? Let's move on then to B, D, D, J. EBDJ was video at one point in time, and the proposed change in the policy was switching that to recording. Again, changing the wording from video to recordings, and changing the location of that site to simply indicate that they're available off of our website, and go with that from there. So any questions, BDJJ? All right, GCD-R, professional staff hiring. That's bringing up to what current practice was. Our previous policy said they came into the business office, got their fingerprints taken. We no longer do that out of there, so we added the Lake County Sheriff, Madison Police, and then also the fact that if someone receives prior approval, they can have it done in their local area by their police department or county sheriff, which certainly moves that process along for someone coming from outside of the Madison area. Any questions, discussion there? GDLA, visitors to the schools. This one is slightly different than what we had at our first reading, but what it does is it also then with that allows us to replace a very similar policy that we're going to have first readings on, which was our visitors to the school, the KK policy. So what we did is simply move this and again brought it up to the procedures that were put in place last year with the visitor's badge, checking in at the principal's office, talks about a little bit of specifics if you fail to get registered, etc. So that would be those changes to policy GDLA. Questions there? Final one is JFCH-R. The only change in the training rule policy is the addition of tobacco, which had been left out previously, and that is the change that we would have for that. Any questions there? Any questions, suggestions, comments relative to any of the policies we're giving second reading to? With the second reading, then they become district-approved policies following our meeting this evening. I take a motion then to move forward with the second reading.
So moved.
Okay, Mrs. Sims makes the motion to move forward on the second reading. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Hanemichael. Further questions or comments on the policies or the motion? Hearing none, all in favor of approval, second reading, signify by saying aye. Opposed, nay. Declare that those now are policies of the Madison Central School District. First reading of proposed policies GCDB. Mr. Jorgensen.
Dr. Bowden, you want to address this one? This one came from, as a sample from Associated School Boards, which we appreciate. There's some things in here we're going to look at probably trying to amend a little bit or change. But it's a lengthy policy, but this all came down because of the DCI and the FBI, FBI background checks. I think it was more the federal level actually than DCI. They had to get in line with the federal. We're required by law to do background checks. So it's not really an option of whether we have a policy pertaining to this or not. We have to have a policy that meets their guidelines so we can continue to have background checks, which were required by law. So this is just to get the first reading, get the process started. There are things that we need to change out of here. I know conversed with Lori a little bit on the volunteers. That's a question. I talked with Dr. Pogany tonight, and the question about the contractors became a little bit clearer. It really isn't pertaining to when we have roofers or plumbers come in, it's pertaining to when we have a food service that's here every day and those type of things, which makes sense.
Yeah.
So this is the skeleton, is what I'm gonna say, of the policy right now.
I think it's, I think it's
Full body.
I think it's the overweight version myself.
We'll hope to trim a little bit, but I don't know that it'll get trimmed a ton, other than trying to correct, or trying to make some changes to those things that seem more feasible for schools with the volunteer part of it, and the direct supervision and those items. So, but we need to get the process started. DCI is gonna start doing audit checks here at some point in time, whether we're one of those schools in the first 180 they do or not, I don't know. But we need to get this in place so we can continue our background checks, so. Any questions on that? I mean, I hate to spend a ton of time right now because we're gonna try to change it a little bit and get more in depth into our next go around with it.
From the sample policy, one of the biggest things that we're looking at proposing in there with the volunteers is if those folks would have direct supervision over those students as a volunteer for more than 2 times, and we obviously would want to do that. And so that was one that was certainly an addition there. And Wade has probably taken as much heat across the state on this policy as he did on the breakfast on Thursday morning at the convention, so it's a question which one he's gotten more heat on maybe, but anyway, we appreciate the fact that we do have a sample to go from, because it would be a mess without knowing where to begin. But
And this was dropped in our laps in June, May or June, when they started telling us we're gonna have to come up with something, so it was a real short time frame. And I know ASBSD and SASD started talking with DCI to get them to, okay, wait now, you can't just say we gotta have it by next week, you gotta give us time to try and get something developed.
Yeah, it was a big surprise for all of us because, DCI was, the Division of Criminal Investigation was being audited by the FBI. And they said, you don't have all the pieces in place. And so we then worked with them, and the pieces you see in here, we didn't make those up. A lot of this comes from FBI regulation. And so we were surprised at the complexity of all this. And we always thought that schools were doing fine on the background checks, but there are other regulations we have to follow. And so whether we like them or not, they're intended to protect the children. And so we need to put those in place.
any further discussion, consideration on GCDD? All right, EBCB.
That's fire drills, and that was one that was listed as under review on our website. So we've met the principals, and basically we're looking at just a couple minor changes. You'll see in that second paragraph there where it says, before it said the first 2 weeks of school, we're looking at the first 3 because, for example, this year, the first 2 weeks, our first week was 2 days, and our second week was 4.5 days. So if we'd had bad weather or whatever else there may be, it really sort of handcuffed us to try and get it done in that time. So we're saying that we think it'd be more feasible to have it be in 3, even though it may be that first week or that second week, and just make sure that we follow our policy that way. And then the next paragraph says fire drills will be held without warning. Well, we'd like to change that to will be conducted with or without warning, because especially in the lower elementary grades, I believe it'd be very beneficial for us to have that first one talking to the kids, not having the anxiety, we're gonna have a drill, here's what's going on, so they know ahead of time. And quite honestly, that's been taking place in most schools, you're included, even though policy said something different. So, and then, for example, the second one would be with fire drill, and probably just say, well, this week maybe, but we wouldn't be so specific on the time. But for the younger kids especially, we just feel it's way more beneficial to have it conducted with or without, especially the first one. So that's the reasoning, the rationale behind wanting to add those words in there. And it still is way above what's required by state law.
So any questions at all on that one? And then the KK, visitors to schools.
We're just proposing that this one will go away because it was all included in the other visitors to school. We have 2 of them listed as visitors to school. I don't know why we need 2, we'll put them all in one policy. So everything that's in here, the only thing that isn't in here, or that isn't in the other policy that was in here, is visitors must report to the school office upon entering the school building. That was already in place in the other policy, so we didn't duplicate it. And then we had changed about not registered with the school office. It says may be requested to report. Hers said if you didn't have the ID badge, you were going to be sent or escorted to the principal's office. So other than that, and then we had an SRO in the bottom line along with law enforcement. Otherwise, this policy is in the other policy.
So we got rid of one policy
We'll get rid of that.
after next month.
And added a new one.
All right, any other discussion or questions? Those, we don't take any action, those are just considered to be the first reading. Item number 17 then is to discuss the date and time of the board retreat. Remember, we got lightninged out because of the Friday night football game, and with that getting rescheduled to Monday, the day we had our board retreat. Mr. Jorgensen has been searching through the school calendars and has some potential tentative dates that seem to work. If everybody would look at their calendars, you want to talk about those, Joel? Or are they less now, or didn't?
No, I gotta remember the word, I thought you wrote them down. The 28th, I believe was one of them.
28th, which is a Thursday. What does that look like for people?
On the 28th, as far as school activities, there's ninth grade football at 4:30, and then there's junior high volleyball here. Both are here at 4:30, so that's the only items that are on the school activity calendar for that night.
What rest of staff? Board, I mean.
I'm good for that one.
Okay,
Good.
The 28th.
28th,
Yep.
Thursday.
Yeah.
Can you make it work?
You can make it work. So we'll go, what would be the earliest that you'd want to start then? 5:30, 5? Tell me what you want to do there. 5:30 for you?
5:30.
Okay. And if you're a little late, we understand.
Okay.
All right. So we'll plan 5:30. We'll, now, since we actually, back in July, set this, then we're actually going to take formal board action to reset it. We never took formal action to postpone it, but we better be sure that we've done that. So what we're looking at then will be a motion for the 28th of September at 5:30 to do our annual board retreat planning session.
So,
So moved by Mrs. Schultz. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Miller. Further questions or discussion? Thank you for your flexibility. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, nay. Declare the motion is passed. Mr. Jorgensen, you have 2 hours and 40 minutes to fill yet.
Not a problem.
Unless
We'll go over
someone,
the criminal background check,
yeah.
line by line.
unless someone on the board would like to make a motion to adjourn before he starts. Mr. Nelson is going to move that we adjourn. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mrs. Schultz. Further undiscussable, undebatable, all in favor, signify by saying aye. Opposed? Declare the meeting is adjourned, and go Vikings!